Let's start with myth number one. Venture capitalists fund startups. That's one that many of us believe. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. It is something a lot of people believe that there's these venture capitalists, these angel investors that are just looking for small people in terms of small businesses to invest in, and I think in many cases that's not the case. Bottom line is a very small percentage of businesses are funded through venture capitalists. You see some of the exciting ones, but bottom line is the kind of average person that's looking to become an entrepreneur, they're going to use traditional sources of funding, whether it's SBA financing, traditional financing, using some of their savings in terms of cash and even retirement dollars if done right. So bottom line is there's many different ways, but venture capitalists, it's not very often used. And number two is it's a very expensive way to get capital. They want a piece of the action, and that piece of the action can tend be pretty big. At least when I looked into it.
Sure. Here's a related myth. Myth number two. You can fund a business with 100% financed capital. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And I get people that will say, Pete, I'm ready to invest in a business. Unfortunately, I don't have any money. And I say, well, that's great. I would tell you to save some of your money because bottom line is to be able to borrow capital, you have to have capital. You see, people want you to have some skin in the game. So if you are looking to start a business, you start with a certain level of capital. And generally, you can kind of think of about 30% of the total investment as a pretty good guide for that. But you always have to have a certain level of capital to be able to go get that SBA financing or get that traditional loan or other things.
Mm-hmm. Here's a really popular myth that you have to start a company to be an entrepreneur. Many of us think of all these guys who started companies in their dorm rooms and think that's the only way forward. Otherwise, I don't have the cred to be an entrepreneur. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I think, so many of us, we think you've got to be the one that comes up with the big idea. And there are so many business opportunities. And I will tell you, the majority of business opportunities, it's somebody taking somebody else's idea and then running with it and making it better. And so think about a little bit about Apple and the iPod, right? That's a fine example, right? They were not the first one to play in the MP3 player business, right? They came in after. They were like third, fourth in the industry coming into it, but they did it differently. And so I think the idea is that you don't have to come up with a big idea. There's so many different options, whether it's a franchise, buying an existing business. But bottom line is you don't have to start the company. You just got to kind of decide what path you want to take.
Mm-hmm. Myth number four, and I'll use as a poster child for this one Damon John, who of course started Fubu with nothing. In fact, he was in debt. So a lot of us tell ourselves that to be a successful entrepreneur means you have to be a huge risk taker. Is that entirely true?
I don't believe it's entirely true. I work with a lot of people. I probably work with about 200 people a year, and so I get to know people. And what I will tell you is that I do believe entrepreneurs are risk takers, but they're calculated risk takers. So they go into a lot of diligence. They'll research stuff. They'll understand the business they're getting into, but most of them do not fall in that category of big risk takers. They're calculated. When they do something, it's a calculated position. Think a little bit about a poker player. They're looking at odds. They're trying to understand what's going on, and they'll make a decision. But it is a calculated decision. So most people are kind of fall into the category of the risk takers, but more calculated.
Okay, that's a good distinction. Myth number five. Great entrepreneurs are just born that way. This stuff cannot be taught. What do you make of that one?
Well, I think it's like the analogy, you're born a salesperson, and I don't think that's the case. And I think a little bit about the book Outliers, and it talks a little bit about that you can learn anything, right, as long as you put enough hours into it, given I'm not going to be the next great singer or anything else like that. But bottom line is that it is something that you learn, and there's all kinds of ways in which you can learn how to become an entrepreneur, but it's definitely something that you can learn as long as you're comfortable being around people and stuff like that. But bottom line is, it's definitely something you can learn.
Mm-hmm. Myth number six. I love this one. You have to be ruthless and deceptive to be a great entrepreneur. Now, there are many examples of ruthless and deceptive entrepreneurs, but are you guys all that bad or not really?
No, when I think of the people that I'm working with, is they look at becoming entrepreneurs. They want to make the world a better place. Certainly, they want to create an income for themselves, but they want to provide jobs for people. right? They want to provide incomes for people. They want to provide a good service or value to customers. And generally speaking, small businesses are actively involved in their community. And so they are, in fact, I think, a good high standard. It's one of the things they talk about character, especially with business owners, is it's what you do when nobody's looking that defines your character. And I think most of the people I work with are of good character and are trying to do the right thing.
That's awesome. I think myth number 7 we touched on a little bit, but let's just restate it. It goes like this. Most successful entrepreneurs start their companies with a breakthrough invention. Usually it's technological. You know, we're kind of alluding to all the social stuff that's gone on the last 10 years or more. But how true is that statement? Do you have to be essentially an innovator to be a great entrepreneur?
I don't think you have to be an innovator in terms of coming up with the next great technology. I think you have to be somebody that's willing to look at something and try to make it better. And whether it's a service, and I think a little bit about, for example, Massage Envy, right? Massage Envy 15 years ago or so basically took massage that traditionally you would go to a salon, a spa, and you would literally pay over $100 to get a massage. And somebody came up with the idea and says, hey, listen, why don't we take the traditional massage, why don't we move it to your local community, make it convenient, and let's make it affordable for people that they can do it, a couple times a month if they choose to do that, right? And so the idea is kind of looking at things and taking them and making them better. And I think that's where most businesses come from. It's not the big idea in terms of technology, and those are certainly sexy, right? All these great technology things. But I think the fact of the matter is more and more people are looking at a product or a service, thinking about how they can make it better, add more value for the customer, and moving forward with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, all you guys just chatted in. I want a massage. This is not that webinar. I'm sorry. But I'll make a note and we'll try to bring on someone that can deliver on that virtually. All right, let's go on. Myth number 8. I love this one too. Being first to market is important for success. A lot of us think, we've got to be there first because there are, as you said, thousands of people that already had the idea, they've implemented it. But if you're not number one to market, you lose out. Is that really true?
It's not true. I mean, there's certainly some advantages being the first to market, but it's not a hindrance, meaning that if you come in and you provide a better product or service, you can kind of come in there. And I think of Menchie's is a frozen yogurt franchise, and they were like 5th or 6th to come into the industry. And they came up with a different proposition. It was more about an experiential event coming to a Menchie's than it was getting yogurt. And so they changed the game, they changed the paradigm, and now they're the global leaders. They've got locations all over the world, including China, and it really was about kind of changing it. So you don't have to be the first. There's some advantages, but certainly it doesn't hold you back from being successful.
Mm-hmm. So 2 more myths to go, and again, you guys chat in yours, and I'll circle back with Pete as our hour continues. But these next 2 I think are kind of critical, right? Myth number 9, older executives do not have the stamina to be successful entrepreneurs. How much rubbish is that? Oops, I've given away the answer, but you tell me.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think I work with majority of people that are looking at becoming entrepreneurs are late in their 40s, their 50s, and even in their 60s. And they're really looking to kind of take control back of their life. They put in a good corporate career, and they're finding maybe they're being undervalued in the corporate world. They're unhappy for whatever reason. And what they'll say to me is, Pete, you know what, I've got a ton of experience and I've got gas in my tank. I am ready to do something. I think the other great benefit as they approach being entrepreneurs is they've got all that experience of that career, that background, that experience that they can bring to the table as they look at doing this, in addition to that they've got a little bit more patience. I know as I've got older and I'm in my 50s now, I got patience. And I think those are 2 things that added to their energy because, face it, 50 is kind of people are still young in their 50s and even in their 60s. They want to keep working. They want to add purpose to their life.
Mm-hmm. Final myth, and then we're going to move on to some of the different options that are available and we'll compare and contrast. But this last one I want to touch on has to do with personal life. And the myth is that entrepreneurship leaves little time for personal life. How true is that?
I think that, again, is false. I think it's based on what you decide to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But, bottom line is it's how you set it up. When I get up and I speak about franchising and somebody goes, well, Subway, I don't want to be somebody that stands behind the counter 7 days a week. And there are all types of businesses where you don't have to be there 24/7. You don't have to be there 7 days a week, all that kind of stuff. So you can set life on your terms. But it is about setting your terms. And so if you make your priorities and set your priorities and work your priorities, then you can have balance. And again, we'll talk about that later.